So, welcome to the 0 to JNCIA course. So, if you know that we have a 52-week 0 to Juniper course as well, where we go through JNCIA, JNCIP, and JNCIE. But that is a pre-recorded course where you actually watch the videos on your own pace. But we wanted to create something where, at least for the JNCIA, the first certification, the associate level, we have a live training where I explain things and also do the lab in front of you. So that's exactly how we are going to go in this course. So this course is very unique in a way that it is going to cover all the important topics that are covered into JNCIA Junos exam. And we will have a lot of hands-on practical as well because we have the tools to do the labs, and also we will provide you the lab along with the solution. And of course, I am going to do the lab within the live Zoom session, explaining exactly how it is done. So you will have all the tools, all the labs, and the explanation so that you can continue and comfortably continue your journey to become a JNCIA certified engineer, right? So let's get started. First of all, let's talk about the course structure. Then later we will see how exactly and what exactly is covered in the JNCIA Junos exam. So the course structure, what we follow for this one is it is going to be once per week. So the live session is going to be once every week, and going to be 2 hours per session. Although it's not a time-driven class, it's a topic-driven class. So every week we are going to cover one topic, and sometimes it may take a little bit more than 2 hours, sometimes less than 2 hours. But we are going to uh, start with three things, as we always do with all the different courses. What is the technology we are covering? Why do we need this particular protocol or technology? What is the use case? And of course, the big question, how to configure it, or how to troubleshoot it. And then this will be backed by the practical configuration. So although the course is designed in a way that 1 hour it will be instructor-led topic discussion where I'll explain you the theory, and then followed by the lab, which I am going to configure step by step. And I will just not be configuring it, I will be explaining exactly what are we doing and why are we doing in a way. So that will be covered in the next 1 hour. So again, the 1 hour is just as a reference. It sometimes the theory can take more than 1 hour, and the lab will not take so much time. Sometimes the theory is not so much, but the lab configuration will take more time. So it could be a little bit plus minus than this. And the same lab that I will solve within the live Zoom session, I am going to send you along with the solution by email. So every week after the Zoom session, live Zoom session is done, you will receive an email with the same lab, and the tools that we will use to configure things like the routers and switches. You will already have access to those, so you will be using those to configure the lab on your own during that week when we don't have the live session. So if any issues you face while you are doing the lab, you can refer to the solution file, because remember, the idea here is to learn, right? So our mindset should be of learning. So don't think that I'm sending you the lab because we want to test your memory or test, do you remember what you learn into the Zoom session? That's not the idea. The idea is to re-strengthen whatever you learn into the live Zoom session. So when you learn the theory and then you see me implementing it, it becomes very clear how the things work. And then when you do it, that time it becomes very solid and you become very comfortable in the technology because you are doing the practical. So anytime you remember, you think that, okay, I don't remember that command, or I don't know how exactly this, how this can be done, you can definitely refer to the solution file, right? Because you're still learning when you are doing the lab on your own. And sometimes what happens that the solution file has some answers which you can use, but you don't understand exactly that why the solution is the way it is. So if the solution file is not clear or some points into that you think why is it done in this way, you can definitely ask me. This is one of the key points, and you will see this is one of the benefit of using this course is because you have the instructor support, my support throughout the duration of this course. So anytime you have any question, you can definitely ask me. So of course, we will have Q&A session into every live Zoom session. After I complete the theory and lab, I'll open the mic so you can ask any questions. But of course, during the week, when we don't have a session, and you are doing the lab on your own, if you have any questions, you can definitely ask on our Facebook forum. We have a Facebook group where you can ask questions, and I will be more than happy to answer there. Or if you are watching the recordings, you can see that every recording has a comment section below where you can type your question. That also directly comes to me. So I can answer there as well. I will be available there as well. So you have complete support. So you will get all the detailed, in-depth fundamental knowledge, the theory. You will see me doing the lab, so you will get the practical solution as well. Then you will get the tools, and you will get the lab to do it on your own along with the solution file. And if you get stuck, you can always ask. The help is not very far. So you can see it's a complete project. It's a complete solution. And of course, the cherry on top is that anything we are covering in the live Zoom session is being recorded. So these recordings will be available for lifetime access. So anytime you want to revision something, you want to come back to some certain topics or some certain configuration commands, you can definitely do that anytime, because the recordings will be available for lifetime. Another benefit of lifetime recording availability is that if the course changes, like if there is an update, some things are added, some old things are removed, and if we update the course accordingly, you will get the access to that as well into the recording section. So we keep on updating our recording section according to the latest information which is there, right? So that way, even after a few years, if you're coming back to this course and you're checking the recordings, you will see they are going to be up to date according to that time, right? As per that time syllabus. So how can this program help? As I mentioned, all the important points, that's what you will see. That the main thing missing in a lot of the other programs is a lot of practice. The hands-on is the missing factor. So you can buy books on Juniper, or you can actually see there are some bootcamp style of courses out there, but they either go very fast, or they don't cover everything. And the biggest thing missing in those is the support. So you might see some pre-recorded videos, or you might get an email ID of the instructor who might be very busy and will not reply you because they have already sold you the course. We wanted to remove all these issues from our course. So we created this a complete solution where not only you get a lots and lots of hands-on, because this is a completely hands-on based program. So of course we will cover theory, because that's very important to understand what is this technology we are talking about, and how exactly we can configure it. Let's say if we are talking about OSPF configuration on the Juniper routers, I'm going to explain you exactly what is OSPF, why do we need this, and then of course how to configure it, along with solving a lab. So there you go. We will have hands-on as well, and the same lab will be provided to you as well. So every week we will have a new lab, and we will cover lots and lots of configuration practical. So you will get a lots of hands-on experience, which will give you confidence into the technology, right? So that's what we do. All the single protocol labs configured and explained by me, followed by the configuration by you. So during that week, you will also configure the same thing. Detailed solution files for practice labs will also be provided. We will have Q&A session, as I mentioned, to clear any doubts. And we use real Junos in backend using EVNG emulator. So the software that we are using is called EVNG, right? Where it's an emulator. Emulator means that it doesn't use any software to simulate the routers or switches. Instead, it uses the real router or switch operating system images in the backend, and it is just providing you an interface to access these images without purchasing the hardware. So you get all the commands that you would get into a real Juniper router or a Juniper switch. So you can actually rest assured you have a peace of mind that you are not missing anything as you would get if you buy a real hardware like a Juniper router or a Juniper switch. Apart from this, there will be troubleshooting tips as well. Troubleshooting is something I always say that depends on your in-depth fundamental knowledge. So if you have your fundamentals clear, troubleshooting becomes easy. Like if something is broken and you know how it's supposed to work, if it is not broken, you can actually connect the missing links and find the issues. So we will definitely gain a lot of troubleshooting experience as well when we cover in-depth theory and also how to tackle any issues, right? And of course, this is a course where you will get my support throughout the course duration. So anytime you have any issues, you have someone you can ask. And we have a very vibrant Facebook group and Facebook community where there are many students from different different stream, different courses. So when you ask questions there, not only you might get answers from other students who have done this before, but they can also benefit from your question. Same thing, you can benefit from other people's question because everyone can see the questions, and if I reply or somebody replies, they can see the answers as well. So it becomes extremely useful, and you always remain motivated. You keep yourself motivated because you can see there are other people also doing the same thing, right? And as I mentioned before, cherry on top is lifetime access to the class recording, which is also a very useful, very special feature that we have in this course, right? Now, speaking of the tools that we use, as I mentioned, we use EVNG, and EVNG is basically a virtual machine that you are going to import into VMware, right? So EVNG is an emulator. So you will need VMware already installed. So if you don't have VMware, I would suggest you can download it from the Broadcom website. And if you have any issues in installing VMware, or if you don't find it on internet, you can let me know also. I can send you the link to directly download from that link from Dropbox, and you can install it. And we recommend using Windows machine. But if you have Mac OS also, you can use EVNG on VMware Fusion. There also you can use it, right? So the one thing is that EVNG is a free software. It's not that we have created it or something. It's a third-party software. You can also download it. But the issue, what happens is that when you download EVNG on your own, it's a bare metal. It's a blank um, host, you can say, right? It has no routers, switches, or anything. So you need to acquire the operating system images on your own from Juniper somehow, and then you need to copy them into EVNG. EVNG is a Linux operating system, so you need to somehow copy it from your system to this EVNG, and then you need to license them properly, set them properly, and then after all this is done, you will have to start creating topologies in EVNG, like how the routers will be connected to each other, how switches will be connected to each other. And after all this is done, then you can start practicing your JNCIA or your Juniper studies. So that's a lot of work if you do it on your own. And we wanted to make sure that we take all the hard work away from this so that you can directly focus on practicing the real thing that you need, the Juniper JNCIA course, routing configuration practice and policy configuration practices right from day one. So that's why you will see that I have created or compiled a OVM image which you can import into VMware. And once you import that, it's a pre-built EVNG, which has all the Juniper routers and switches images already licensed, and topologies are already created in EVNG. So you don't need to actually think, okay, how would I connect routers if I want to do an OSPF practical? Or how would I connect the routers if I want to do a firewall practical? All these things are taken care of already. You can directly concentrate on learning, right? So for learning, I will send you the lab files every week, and those lab files will work on the topologies which are already built into the OVA that I will send you, the EVNG OVA, right? Our solution file is also going to be sent to you. As I mentioned, we are not testing you or your memory every week. We are trying to re-strengthen your learning so you can refer to the solution file as many times as you like. You're still learning that part, right? So that's why during the off days in a week, you are encouraged to do the labs again, and feel free to contact me in case of any questions that you have, right? So the OVA that I sent you, if you import this into VMware, you will actually get the complete working topologies. And basically what happens is that you will need some resources on your computer or your laptop to use this. Now Juniper is slightly more resource heavy comparing to Cisco routers and switches. So the minimum recommended RAM for core topics is 16 gig. That means you should have at least 16 gig of RAM if you want to do all the practicals with the optimum speed without reducing any performance, without any performance reduction. But I have seen people use also 8 gig, and that also works okay. I mean, there might be a little bit lag or slightly slower performance, but it's still doable. But to be honest, if you want a smooth experience, 16 gig will be great. And if you are planning to go for JNCIP and JNCIE in future, recommended would be at least 32 gig RAM. But of course, that's a long-term project also 52 weeks recorded sessions. So 32 gig RAM is a good investment for a 1 year training period, right? But of course, these live classes are only for JNCIA. So this is going to be limited. It's not going to take 1 year, but I'm talking about if you are plan to go all the way to expert level in future, 32 gig RAM would be actually nice. Once you import the OVA, you should actually set the first network interface to NAT so that you can get IP address that we will use to browse the EVNG interface, the GUI interface, right? So when you import the OVA, you go to the settings of the OVA. You can first of all set the memory depending on how much you want to assign based on how much you have. And you see that there are two network adapters, network adapter and network adapter 2. So you can ignore the network adapter 2. We don't use that. But the first one, that should be set to net so that when you boot the virtual machine, it will receive an IP address, and that IP address you need to open in any browser. And from there onward, you will be able to see the EVNG interface where you can open the topologies and start using. All right. See a question. So I just need to import the OVA, but the actual labs are in web interface. Yes, that's right. So what happens is that when you import the OVA, you will see that into the list of virtual machines, and you just need to boot it. So when you boot it, after setting these things like network adapter, type NAT, and memory according to how much you have, after this, you just start the virtual machine, like boot it, and once it is booted, you will see it will show you an IP address. And let me show you as an example. Once the machine is booted, it will show you something like this, where it will tell you EVNG and use the HTTP :// and an IP address. So this is the IP address you need to note down. In your case, it could be different, of course. And then you see a login prompt. So you don't need to log in here because this is the backend Linux operating system of EVNG. This is used if you want to perform some maintenance task on the EVNG itself. But that's what I was talking about. I already have done everything. So you don't need to do anything here. You just boot the machine. You come to this screen, and on this screen, you see the IP address, you note that down, and then you're just going to open it into into any of the browser. So when you open it into the browser, that's where you will see all the topologies, and you will just be using that to start the routers, access the routers and switches, and configure them. So you don't need to do anything in this EVNG Linux. Once it is booted, you see IP address, just minimize it and use the browser as long as you're using it, right? All right, so the JNCIE OVA file I have already sent yesterday. So you must have received an email from me. I sent to both your emails. So maybe check spam folder if you receive it from my email. I will uh, in the uh, in the chat. I'm sending you my email ID. So you must have received an email from this email ID. If you didn't receive it, you let me know. I will resend it to you, right? All right, so that's the course structure. But now let's talk about the JNCIA itself. Like, what exactly is this certification, and what topics are we going to cover? So, Juniper Certified Associate. So, this is actually Internet Network Associate, and it is called Dash Junos because Junos is the operating system used by Juniper. So, this exam is the primary exam. You can say just like CCNA level of exam in Juniper, equivalent to that. So the exam code for this is JN0-105. So once you are prepared after this class and you want to take the exam, this is the exam code that you're going to take. Exam duration is 90 minutes, and you can go to any Pearson centers where you can take the exam. There will be around 65 multiple choice questions, MCQs. So this is, as you can see, it's not a configuration exam, it's just multiple choice question exam. And there is no prerequisite, so you don't need any prior certifications or anything to take this exam, right? So what are the topics that are covered in this exam? So there are multiple different categories that are covered. For example, networking fundamentals, Juno's operating system fundamentals, user interfaces, configuration basics of a Juniper router, operational monitoring and maintenance. So any show commands, any troubleshooting commands, and maintenance command. Routing fundamentals. So that's where we will learn routing protocols like RIP, OSPF, routing policy and firewall filter. This is also very, very important because what happens is that once you have your routing configuration done, you want to control the communication on the control plane or data plane basis. So that is called routing policy. It is very similar to route maps that are used in Cisco, and firewall filters to secure your communication, like who can communicate with whom and which protocols or ports are allowed. All these configuration we can do in firewall filters. So these are the, as you can see, these are 7 major uh, areas that they cover. Now, going into the detail, the first area is networking fundamentals. So networking fundamentals is important, of course, because it's a networking certification. So we definitely should know what is the difference between a collision domain and broadcast domain, functions of routers and switches. What does a router do? What does a switch do? Ethernet network introduction, layer 2 addressing like MAC addresses, and how does the address resolution work? On the layer 3, what is IP addressing, including subnet mask and subnetting, IP version 4 and IP version 6, both, uh, subnetting and supernetting, and also decimal to binary, binary to decimal conversion, like how can we convert one to another, and what is the concept of longest match routing? Longest match routing basically is if you have multiple routes in your routing table, you always try to look for the longest match to the incoming packet so that you can decide where would it be sent next to get the idea. So this is something also we'll learn. Uh, Quality of service, which is the QoS part of it, and also the transportation protocol, transport protocols like TCP versus UDP, or connection oriented versus connectionless protocols. So these are the network fundamentals which we must be comfortable with before we get into the Junos configuration or Juniper router configuration. The second part is Junos operating system fundamentals. So of course we are going to start using Juniper routers and switches which use Junos. Junos is short for Juniper operating system. Just like in Cisco, they have Internet Operating System, iOS. In Juniper, they have Junos. So we should be comfortable with the operating system, some of the basic things like what is the software architecture, how do they name their new releases, uh, what is the difference between control plane and forwarding plane. Control plane is used to configure the policies, routing tables, MAC address tables, and forwarding plane is simply used to forward the frames from one port to another port as fast as possible, right? Similarly, we have routing engine and packet forwarding engine. So control plane, routing engine works on control plane, packet forwarding engine works on the forwarding plane. So how do they work and how do they interact with each other? Also, transit traffic processing and exception traffic. What is the difference between these two? We are going to learn also in this course. Transit traffic is the one that is just passing through the router. So it is not destined to the router. It is just going through the router via that router. On the other hand, exception traffic is the traffic which is either destined to the router or it needs some extra processing before it can be forwarded. You cannot just forward it as it is. So that is called exception traffic. So we are going to learn all these things into the operating system fundamentals part, right? Then comes the user interfaces. So how do we interact with the Juniper device? So we are going to learn the CLI functionality. What are the different CLI modes? For example, you will see that unlike Cisco routers in Juniper, you have a candidate configuration and then you have a running configuration. So candidate configuration means that whatever changes you make, they are not actually immediately implemented. They remain into the candidate configuration. You can check everything is correct. There are no syntax errors or anything. And then you can actually commit it to the running configuration. And then it becomes the active configuration basically. So the candidate configuration is where you make all the changes. And unless until you commit, it doesn't become the active configuration. So we'll see the different modes for that. We'll see how we can navigate from one mode to another mode, CLI navigation. How can we use the context sensitive help in CLI? So you become very comfortable with Juniper CLI architecture. We also see the pipe sign that we use to filter the output or to change it according to our requirement. Because in Juniper, you can actually see the same information in 2 or 3 different ways. So we should be aware of how to do that. Active versus candidate configuration, as I mentioned already, and how we can actually revert to the previous configuration if we need to. You will see that in Juniper, you can actually keep last 50 changes that you made, like last 50 commits that you did. It actually keeps all those configurations intact. So if you do something wrong, or if you find out you need to revert your configuration, you can easily do that. And how it is done, that is something also we are going to learn in this course. Also, modifying, managing, and saving the configuration files. Also viewing, comparing, and loading the configuration files. So many times you want to keep multiple different types of configuration as backup, so that you can load any particular type depending on what work you are doing. So that is something you can easily do as well in Juniper devices or Juniper routers. So apart from CLI, you can also use GUI, which is called JWeb. But JWeb is actually used only for the very basic configuration. If you want to do something advanced, it's better to use CLI. It is actually faster also to use CLI, and it gives you much more knowledge of the technology comparing to using just the GUI, which is called JWeb. So just the core and common functionality we are going to see into JWeb. Next part is configuration basics. So that's where we will learn what is the factory default state of any Juniper router or a switch. What is the initial configuration? By the way, although I'm saying router and a switch, but in JNCIA, they concentrate only on the router. Once you go to the JNCIS, there they start introducing switches also, right? But you will see mostly some of the core technologies or core concepts are same. So what is the initial configuration? How to create user accounts, which is a default user account, like there is a root user account. There are different login classes, authentication methods, plain text authentication, or do you want to use hashing methods? How many different types of interfaces or ports are supported? What are their properties? What is the concept of configuration groups? And some additional initial configuration elements such as NTP, SNMP, syslog, and configuration archival. So you will see that logging and tracing is also an important part, because whenever you do something and you want to check why something happened the way it happened, you can always check the logs, because logs actually record the events that happen on the device. And you can also use tracing to see something in real time, that what exactly is happening right now. It is called the trace log. Finally, we are also going to understand rescue configuration. So in case if there is a major issue and you want to rescue your device, there can be a configuration that it can go back to, which is called the rescue configuration, right? Next thing is operational monitoring and maintenance. So all the show commands, monitor commands, interface statistics and errors, any network tools such as ping, route, telnet, secure shell, how do they work, and how can we use them in Juniper devices? Juniper operating system installation and upgrades. How can we do that? How can we power on or shut down the Juniper devices? Root password recovery. So root account is the all-powerful super user of your Juniper device. So if you are logged out and you don't know, or you forgot the password of your root device, then you can do the root password recovery. So we are going to see the procedure of root password recovery as well, right? So once, by the time we reach to this point, we will be pretty comfortable with the Juniper operating system and the basic maintenance of it. Now we can move to the main topic, which is the routing, right? Routing fundamentals. So we are going to understand what is routing, how does the routing or traffic forwarding work, what are the roles of routing tables, what is the difference between a routing table and a forwarding table, route preference. So if you have multiple routes going to the same destination but via different routers, so how we decide which one to use, which one is preferred over the other. So that is called the route preference. What is the concept of routing instances? Very, very interesting concept. And then of course we come to the routing, static routing and dynamic routing. So what is the advantages and use cases of dynamic routing protocols? We are going to see that as well. Then we are going to cover routing policy and firewall filters. So this is once your routing is already configured, you can actually manipulate it. You can change it according to your requirements by creating some policies, and you can secure your network by using firewall filters. So we are going to learn here default routing policies, import and export. What is the difference between these two types of policies? What is the flow of a routing policy? Effect of policies on the route and the routing table, policy structure and terms, so that we can create some policies. And of course, everything will be backed by a lab. So you will see, we will do the practicals as well. What is the match criteria, match types, and what actions can you take in the policy? And of course, we are going to learn the firewall filter concepts and filter structure and terms. And finally, also filter match criteria and their action. So filters are actually for securing the device, right? That's why you see that what happens is that filters directly apply to the packets that are moving through the router or going via the router. So what is the effect of filters on those packets? We are going to learn that as well. We are also going to learn one very interesting security technology, which is called RPF or URPF, unicast reverse path forwarding, that can actually help you to avoid asymmetrical routing and also to avoid any kind of packet spoofing attacks. So we will learn that as well, right? So a slight introduction to the Juniper devices. So we have routing devices, switching devices, and security devices. There are different types of devices available in Juniper. Although in JNCIA, we will be concentrating only on the routing devices, but we should have a basic knowledge like how many different types of devices are there, right? So in routing devices, you will see that there are different platforms, different series based on what you want to achieve. There are ACX series, LN series, M series, MX, PTX, and T series. Now, depending on how much workload you have, how much traffic it needs to process, how many features you need to support, and how many ports or interfaces do you need. Based on that, you are going to purchase a device. Like if you are a very small company or Soho, small office, home office, an ACX series router will be more than enough. But if you are a serious company, you need a little bit bigger devices, more throughput, then you will go for M series or even MX series. So you use MX series have actually more throughput capabilities, and they have more port availability as well. If you are on a service provider level organization where you need huge number of huge terabytes of data or petabytes of data needs to move, then the PTX series devices are good for that. And even higher ranges, you can go for the T series routing devices. So these different platforms simply means that they support different capabilities, right? Like how much can they transfer and what features do they support. On the other hand, on the switching side, you have EX series, which is very popular on the enterprise level. But if you're on the service provider side or data center, then you can go for QFX series as well, which is very high level of switching devices. For security, Juniper supports J series and SRX series devices. J series are actually routers, but you can configure them as firewalls as well. But SRX series are actually dedicated firewalls, which can secure your network from the traffic coming in and going out. Right now, no matter which kind of Juniper device you are going to use, you will see that all of them have the candidate configuration and active configuration. So candidate configuration is the temporary configuration, and it doesn't take effect immediately. You need to commit. You need to use the commit command to save it as the active configuration, right? And the good thing is that Juniper keeps last 50 candidate configurations in memory, and you can always roll back to one of the earlier configurations. If you have made many changes and now they are making your network unstable, you can go back to the stable one. Maybe four commits back you had a stable configuration, you can roll back to that one because you have last 50 commits saved, right? An active configuration is the one that is the current active configuration on the system. So for example, if I shut down an interface, nothing has happened. That interface is still not shut down because it is done into the candidate configuration. Only after I commit, it becomes the active configuration. And now that interface is shut down and no traffic can be received or sent on that interface. So this is actually very useful. And many times when we make some mistakes, we can always check it before committing it that gives us a lot of peace of mind, right? So that will be the complete structure. So we saw that how this course structure is designed, how it is very unique from other courses, and what is the syllabus that we are going to cover, and some of the basic information about routers and switches today, right? So what's expected from your side? So the OVA that I have sent you, just make sure that it is imported and ready so that we can start doing the labs. Although you will see that first couple of weeks we will be doing the network fundamentals, which is theory. So you do have 2 or 3 weeks before you need that OVA up and running. So no worries, you don't need it immediately, but we will use that for the labs when it comes to the configuration part, right? But just show up into the live classes, do the labs, ask questions, and be consistent. That's the only thing required from your side. You can see everything else is taken care by us, and we will make sure that you become very, very confident in the JNCIA topics by the end of this course. So that's it. Let's get started. Thanks a lot. And that's it from my side. So let me allow you to unmute in case if you have any question. Thanks, Janaya.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So let me know on the email anytime if you have any issue with the OVA, or if you don't see it, I can resend you. And that's it from my side. So have a good night. Bye bye.